Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com, as well as on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Also, if you would like to tell your story, you're welcome to contact me there as well at dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. I'm so happy to have a brand new guest on. I have Jamie Flick, Pennsylvania State Representative, on my podcast. He is of the 83rd Legislative District, serving parts of Lycoming and Union Counties in Pennsylvania. And there's a House bill that he amended that reduces the factors considering during child custody issues from 19 to 12, and his amendment improves the bill by requiring family courts to provide anyone named in the custody petition within a written copy of the new factors when decisions are made. And so I totally welcome you, Jamie Flick. I'm totally honored to have you on.
Likewise, Marianne, thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to it.
Oh, definitely. We have a lot to go over because parents are very happy about hearing this because these judges are dragging things out.
That's 100%. So what we're looking to do is actually take my big piece of legislation, which did not pass, came very, very close in the House. And I'll just give a little background. In Pennsylvania, the House of Representatives, 102 Democrats, 101 Republicans. So very, very purple. We have a Senate that is Republican, and of course, a governor that is Democrat. So it's very difficult, even on good legislation, clean legislation, to get something through. So since my large 50-50 presumptive bill narrowly missed, I've taken a step backwards, and I'm trying to take little pieces out of that and advance that legislation, even if it's an amendment, one step at a time.
I think that would be very frustrating.
It's frustrating, yeah. Things move at a scale's pace, or I'm sorry, snail's pace. I've only been in office for 2.5 years. My background was in business. Prior to that, in farming. And in farming, if you want to get something done, you grab a shovel and you do it.
Right, right.
And same with your own business. If you need to work a weekend, you work a weekend. So yeah, it's frustrating to watch good legislation stall,
Mm.
even at a committee level as you're trying to get it onto the governor's desk.
Well, Josh Shapiro has signed the legislation that includes an amendment that you helped author to reduce the burden of on families and these courts during these disputes and reducing the factors. And how is this going to work? And when does it take effect in these family courts?
Was signed, it seems to me, on record time. So the bill, House Bill 378, again, which reduced the number of factors, great bill. So again, my amendment simply says to both judges, or I'm sorry, to the judge, both parties in writing have to receive what these 12 amendments are. When I went through my own custody battle, I didn't know there were factors. I had no idea whatsoever that there were all these 19 factors that the judge is supposed to score, and then from that, it sort of dictates who gets how much custody. So it was very important to me, especially in today's world, Marianne, where there's so many pro se litigants, those being people that represent themselves and may not know the law, that they at least are told by the court that's going to decide the most important decision of your life. And that is, who's going to get the children, how often you're going to get the children. It was critical to me that that became law. So I'm very thankful to Governor Shapiro. So once that hit his desk, he immediately signed it, and that becomes law right at the end of August. So 60 days, I think he signed it right at the end of June. So toward the end of August, that will become law.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Long way to go, but that's a first step. And you had mentioned, Marianne, that the length of time. So even after that, the next piece I'm working on is what I call the status quo legislation. Because as you know, and as many of our listeners know, especially those interested in this, it is drawn out. Once you go to court for a custody battle, it behooves attorneys from both sides and the courts, in a sense, to drag this out, especially when there's dollars involved, big dollars involved. So the status quo, how that will work, and I'm working with the Pennsylvania Bar Association on this, is there will be a limited number of time that once you file for custody, and let's say one of the two parents have the children, what the court says, the hearing officers, is the status quo is, well, where are the children living right now? Well, I don't think that should be the case. If you've been married 20 years, well, the status quo should include those 20 years. Who was the primary caretaker? Were both parents involved? It shouldn't be the day that you're separated to the day that you go back in front of a hearing officer, that hearing officer says, well, geez, Miss Petrie, or geez, Mr. Flick, the child's been with the other parent for the last 14 weeks, so we're going to keep it that way. No, you got to consider the years prior to that. Because going back to what I alluded to, the length of time and the continuance after continuance and the game playing by these divorce attorneys and sometimes by the judges to draw that out to create their own status quo to benefit financially judges, court systems, I should say, and the entire family law business. We got to fix that.
I agree, especially with these pro ses. I was pro se, and they're not happy with anyone being a pro se,
Well, we could tell stories to each other. You're exactly right.
right? And they're saying that the pro se will drag it out because they don't know the laws, because we're not trained attorneys.
Well, at $240 an hour, when you know it's going to take a couple years for you to even hope to get 50-50 custody, who can afford that, right? It's going to get drug out. You're going to get run through the mud. So what you're going to see, and what I've even seen over the last few years when I look at the court calendar here in Lycoming County, is more and more and more pro ses. Family law attorneys are pricing themselves out of the business.
Definitely. And I'm so glad I did go pro se because a lot of parents are realizing that these attorneys are torpedoing their cases. They're not helping their cases. I personally had one good attorney and she was magnificent, but that's another podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. I went through 5 attorneys, went through 5 different during my process. Certainly, I don't want to say learn the law, but you do learn a lot sitting in a courtroom for a couple of years. You get extremely frustrated. I think you may bring it up, Marianne. You and I have something else in common, and that was health issues. Because
Mhm.
if somebody, again, kidnaps your children, you're going to have health issues. You're going to have mental health issues. You're going to have physical health issues. And I think the listeners can appreciate that.
Definitely. Um, it's just my health issues scared the judge, which I thought was great. And simultaneously at that time, I also won in Superior Court on the child support, which also scared her.
Yeah, that's
But
fantastic. Congratulations.
thank you. That's 406 WDA 2017. But I had to tell my husband, I can't do this pro se after my heart attack. We had to get a lawyer. And she was magnificent.
Yeah.
But she kind of fixed what she could. But when you're dealing with a judge with a vendetta, see, this is what these pro ses are up against is judges that have it out for you even personally. And I know there's not much you can fix with that.
I'm not so sure about that. Listen, it's a long haul. I'm willing to try anything and everything. So when you look at the judicial reviews, if you do have a complaint about a court of common pleas, judges, you can send that complaint in. But I can tell you less than 1% are ever found. And especially if you're pro se, probably less than 0.01% that they would overturn something the judge or find the judge in contempt or ultimately have a judge removed from the bench. One piece of legislation I've in that's gained broad bipartisan support is cameras in the courtroom.
Mhm.
So I give an example sometimes, Marianne. You could have a judge and you get a copy of the transcript, and we can talk about transcripts and some of the issues there, but you get a copy of the transcript and you can see something in that transcript and you can read it. But if you don't see it, if you don't feel it, if you don't taste it, it's completely different. The words are the words on the paper, and you could see where it says, well, Miss Petrie, you could have filed that motion 6 months ago, but you didn't. So shame on you. And that's somewhat innocuous and it doesn't sound bad. But if you had cameras in the courtroom and the exact same words were spoken, but you saw the judge stand up and scream and spitting and pointing at you and intimidating you as a pro se litigant,
Mhm.
again, exact same words, but transcript written word versus the camera. one would go viral, one would not, even though it's the exact same case. So I am working with cameras in the courtroom. I think I have some support from the Pennsylvania Trial Lawyers Association, and we'll keep moving forward with that legislation simultaneously with the other projects.
That's great because I have been court watching, and what I have noticed, at least down in Florida, is a pro se, and I saw this. This was just terrible. She was giving her closing argument. So the judge got tired of her and just muted her. And so we have to have tamper-proof mics as well as these cameras.
Yeah, I would say unbelievable, but after what I've been through, not unbelievable.
Right, right. And I've always told parents, keep complaining on these judges. It could be the 114th complaint that
Yep.
gets that judge off the bench.
Yep, and it's a new world now with podcasts like yours. I will say my last couple interviews, one with ABC and one with CBS, a typical post that I make on my site about legislation or what my office, offers, might get 300 or 400 views or likes, and that's great. The ones about this exact topic are getting 25 to 30,000 views within a weekend. So it's not you and I are just concerned about that. People all across the Commonwealth, all across the country, this is a epidemic. This is a pandemic, the worst of its kind, because it is another, as Pennsylvania experienced years ago. This is another kids for cash that's going on. And I don't want to say, let me just point out, not every judge is bad. Not every divorce attorney is bad, but it is systemic and overall it needs a complete overhaul.
Right. I had two good judges, and I will say that. Okay. The
Yep.
ones in Superior Court weren't so hot at that time,
Yeah.
back in
Understood.
2015, 2016. Now there's a whole bunch of new ones, and they seem better. But, you know, I just don't know what to do with these attorneys that are perpetual liars, and they break into the custody case with a false accusation, and then they all run with it.
Yeah, the false accusations. Also, I'm looking to do legislation there. I'll give you a little example of that. I had state police, and listen, the false accusations obviously hurt who it's false against, but it also hurts other ones that are true. For women and men that are being abused, we have to protect them. And we have to do everything in our power to do that. And we have some great resources here. Our YWCA, under their WISE Options program, is phenomenal in the city of Williamsport. But then when there's these false ones that then you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. I will say in our county, I spoke with our district attorney, not a single time when perjury is found has anybody ever been charged. That probably is true throughout the entire Commonwealth. So I have seen videos where attorneys have encouraged one party over the other party to make false accusations. So when the state police came to visit me, I don't know, a year ago, you would never believe what they think. And again, this is just the local police coming that happen to be state troopers. What they believe is the percentage of PFAs, protection from abuse orders, that are false. You want to take a wild guess, Marianne? It's a very high number.
Um, 84% are
You're
false.
very close. 80%. Yep.
Okay.
So 80% of the PFAs are false according to the state police out of the local barracks. So something has to be done. Their recommendation was for me to write legislation that if you're guilty, for one, if you and I are married, Marianne,
Mhm.
and you file PFA against me, I'm not allowed to talk to you. I'm not allowed to text you, whatever the order is. My guns are gone. My hunting season is over. But it doesn't stop you from texting me, from calling me, from hammering me, from putting things on Facebook at all. What the state police are recommending is, hey, if you're the one that files the PFA, you should have to sort of be held to the same standard. If I can't text you, you certainly shouldn't be able to abuse that privilege in the other direction. You shouldn't be able to text me. So we're looking at legislation to do that and also to hold those accountable that are doing the false PFAs.
I agree. In fact, I have been following a case that has been in my two books, Raised by These Wolves, Volume 1 and Volume 2. I've got this gentleman in here, Jim Schock, and I've been following his case because it's very egregious. There's Jim. And apparently, the judge is okay with allowing his ex to live with a 4-count felon with his child. What do you do? And, they came up with some, lie, and he's never had a parking ticket, and they took away his guns at one time.
Yeah, it is absolutely sad story after sad story after sad story. A few weeks ago here in my district, a father that had been trying for 13 years to get partial custody, 13 years ended his life. And this happens. This happens all across America. Now, listen, if you're guilty of something, would you be trying for 13 years to try to get partial custody of a child?
Mm.
Absolutely not. It is just so heartbreaking, tear jerking.
Mhm. Well, definitely. And there was mentioned on Facebook and throughout the whole social media of a mother, Lizzie Harding, and she died under mysterious circumstances that are still being investigated. And apparently, she was under a PFA. However, one of my friends was asking me that, at the funeral, the ex shows up. Now, if there's a PFA, should he even be going to that funeral? I
Great
mean,
question. Yeah.
I don't know what to say about that. But there has to be something done with these false accusers when it's one accusation after another. In my case, the second accusation destroyed my career of 23 years as a registered nurse.
Yeah.
So the damage, and then not even a slap on the wrist.
Right. Right. Being held in contempt. No, that's not even a slap in the wrist. And think
Right.
about it. If you were married for 15, 20 years and there's never been a single accusation against Marianne, right, at all, and then suddenly in court all these accusations come out, that would make me scratch my head. There's little to no investigation whatsoever. And if you're such a terrible mother, Marianne, then why did an ex not call children and youth on you during those 20 years of marriage? Or why did not children and youth get involved in that case? Why suddenly, because you're going through a money-making scheme of family court, um, why does it then come out? So there's lots of things that need to be done to help correct the system.
Do you think people are just out to even just destroy the other person?
Often the case. And you listen, men and women equally guilty, if you ask me. So my legislation has nothing to do with fathers whatsoever or mothers. It's about truly the best interest of the children. I'm happy to defend a mother as much as I am to defend a father. But yeah, there's vindictiveness on both sides. The very, very best thing and the best case scenarios is never to go to court, right?
Right.
Again, the example, you and I are married. Obviously, we're not happy with each other if we're getting divorced, but we have to take a step back and say what's the best custody plan for the best interest of our children together. So if you're married that long, there's people married 25 years that then go through a custody battle. Those 25 years need to be considered. I don't know the exact answers, but giving something to a hearing officer or a judge that looks at it for 1 hour and then decides
Mhm.
is is worse than what they're deciding on a murder case, quite honestly.
Do you think there should be a jury in there, or get rid of family court, put it into civil court where there can be a jury?
Absolutely should be a jury, 100%, because I would say in most cases, if you grab 12 men and women from the local church or from the local bar, either one, and put them in there, they're going to understand it, a group of peers, and they're going to have nothing to gain or lose. Judges have things to gain and lose. The court themselves, and maybe we can touch on Title 4D funding in a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Mary Ann, I see you shaking your head, yes. So, and how money plays a multi-billion, with a B, multi-billion dollar role throughout the United States.
This is what I question is when these parents are out to destroy the other parent. It's just so creepy that they would go out to destroy to the point where that they're kicked out of the house and they're sleeping in their car. Why would they do that to the parent of their child?
Yeah, very sad, extremely sad. Again, vindictiveness is the word that comes to mind, quite honestly.
Mhm. And there's also the problem of conflict of interest when the judge and these opposing counsels have worked in the DA's department for years, and you tell your attorney, look, this is what's going on top of the ex's wife working in the courthouse. This is a conflict of interest. And the lawyer goes, oh, no, it's not.
Yeah, of course it is. And we have 67 counties. Most of them are rural counties here in Pennsylvania. So most of them have nepotism in the court. Two parties are, and your example of the DA is a good one. A lot of times the judges were former assistant district attorneys or district attorneys themselves that are involved, and their wife could be your own attorney, for God's sake. So many conflicts of interest. You can't even name them all. I had dozens of them just in my case. So
Well, that's why, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think family court should just be abolished and just put it into civil court where there's a jury. And I would hope things would be done fairer, or maybe I'm wrong.
yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think if you take two attorneys, listen, their job, they're trained when they go to law school, um, is they're allowed to be extremely zealous. That's what the law says. They can be very, very zealous defending their client. So if you ask your family law attorney or your ex's family law attorney, are you doing what's in the best interest of our children? Well, the answer is absolutely not. They're doing what they say is in the best interest of their clients. So there already is a conflict there that the courts, all you keep hearing is best interest of the child, best interest of the child. They repeat it over and over and over again.
Mhm.
The two attorneys have definitely not are in the best interest of the child. They never sit down and say, you know what, I think your ex is correct or your client is correct on this. Let's try to work more toward a more equitable child custody solution. No, no, the attorneys are not trained to do that, nor do they do it. They are going to look at the billable hours. They're going to argue and extend and get continuance after continuance after continuance. They have nothing to lose by wearing you down, Marianne. I'm not saying they hoped that you had a heart attack, but I have little doubt that they contributed, or the system in itself contributed into health issues. I had a stroke going through mine.
Mhm.
That took me 6 months to learn to talk again and to learn to
Oh,
walk again. And family court is in large part responsible for that. So if it's happening to you and it's happening to me, it is happening to tens of thousands of uh, of constituents or parents across the Commonwealth.
most definitely. My cardiologist said, well, when you had this heart attack, because I moved down here, and he said, what was going on in your life at this time when you had this heart attack in 2017? I said, oh, I was being hauled in every other week to child support court, because a vice president feels he needs money from an ex he completely destroyed. And the cardiologist said, well, this is the cause, the heart attack was a cause from all
Sure.
the stress of all of this, because this was not a normal heart attack, he said. But that's another podcast.
Yeah, yeah. But I
You know,
think, Marianne, that just to prove some of the conflicts of interest, and that is not all about the best interest of the child, that often it's about money. So maybe we can just touch a little bit on what the Title 4 IV, Roman numeral IV dash
mhm.
D as in dog, Title 4D funding is. And I'm no expert at it, so I'll warn the audience ahead of time. But it started in the mid 1970s with the Carter administration. And a lot of laws were good laws when they were created. And I think this was probably one of those examples. And at that time, we're talking half a century ago, more women, just housewives, worked out of that. So when they went through divorce, it was to help to reimburse county courts, to help with the medical assistance to get the wife back up on their feet, to do some funding on that. But then it really exploded during the Clinton administration. It doesn't matter if the husband's a millionaire or if the wife's a millionaire. When you pay your ex-spouse part of the Title 4D money, so if I'm paying you $5,000 a month, an incentive fund comes from Social Security. You want to know why Social Security is going broke? It comes out of Social Security right back to the court system in all 67 counties in the Commonwealth and beyond. So I'm going to give you a true life example. I'm actually going to read the court order that I got when I finally almost went to trial and was told that the judge still was not going to agree to give me 50-50. So that court order, which proves it's definitely not in the best interest of the child, like they claim, the exact words for that, I'm going to read it because I don't want to get it wrong. And you tell me how this is in the best interest of the child. So the court order states the parties agree. So this is after years of me wearing them down trying to get 50-50. And I still couldn't get it by a judge. Instead, we had to get a court order that says the parties agree. And if the audience listens to nothing else during this podcast except this one paragraph, the parties agree that father shall continue to pay child support to mother as though she has more overnights than father. In the event father seeks a support order based upon the parties having equal overnights, then the parties agree father shall no longer have his Thursday overnights. In other words, you're going to keep paying, and now we've blackmailed you. You're going to keep paying as though you're not seeing your kids at all. That way, we still get incentive Title 4D funding. And the next part of it says, again, if the father comes back in and wants a modification of custody, then we're going to take away his Thursday overnights, thereby providing mother with the majority of the overnights. It's pure and simple. This is blackmail. I've shown this from the governor on down, and the number of oh my goodness, and the head shaking is you can't even count it. It's unimaginable. So if you want to rewind, everybody that's listening now, and listen to that again, what it's saying is, Mr. Flick, we're going to give you 50-50, but you're going to keep paying so that we keep getting money. Never does it say in the best interest of the child. It's the best interest of the dollar sign for the family law system.
Exactly. And I've heard that part of that also goes into the judge's pensions.
Don't know that to be a fact. I can tell you when I went through my case, what the judge did, Court of Common Pleas judge, is used part of that incentive funds to give bonuses to the domestic relation workers. If that's not a conflict of interest, I don't know what is. And I've been trying to get that data from the court for a long time. I'm getting a little bit of a runaround over how big were these bonuses that the domestic relation worker that is helping to decide, Marianne, how much you're paying or your husband is paying. They're getting bonuses to help decide that. That is beyond the conflict of interest, and that needs fixed.
So that's extortion. Uh,
It is.
so why is it when I was going through this, my ex never had to show his W-2. I was always the one showing that, now I'm working at a fabric store,
Yeah.
working 5 hours a week, if that. Okay, so his grand scheme of trying to get money out of me and make my new husband pay was not going to happen. But when we were downstairs in these shady domestic relations in Erie County Courthouse, I was sitting there and we were waiting on something, but the officer said, "I know why you got your kids taken away from you." And I smiled at her and I said, "Right, through legal kidnapping and false accusations and lies." And then I looked at her and I said, "You do know he's versing me." And she
Yeah.
goes, "You'll love it." "What does that mean?" I said, "He is versing me." I said, "That now, listen, there's a patent that he had done." My attorney, who was kind of babysitting me, but she said, "Go to this thing by yourself." And I wish she would have come. But,
Yeah.
uh, you know, I'm going to need your 1044, your W-2, and your 1099. And he would not
Yeah.
give it. And they never forced him to give it. So
Right.
what do you
Yes.
do when there's just no checks or balances in these shady domestic relations
Right.
units?
The system in Pennsylvania is called PACES,
Yep.
PACES. If you're paying, again, the best thing is never go to court. Agree with your ex on custody and also agree on support. And that by far is the most comforting thing. And that happens often. Thank God that happens often. But again, if you're going to court, you're going to have problems. I mean, your first step as a hearing officer in Pennsylvania, and his or her job is to try to get you to agree. That never happens. If it would happen, you wouldn't have been to court.
Right.
So that is almost useless. And another issue with a hearing officer, Those are the most important because they're about custody. Those are not, there is no court reporter, so there's no transcripts to get. There is, again, as I said prior, no cameras in the courtroom allowed. So everything that happens there, nobody knows exactly what it is. You can't appeal these decisions. So that I'm also working with, and that ties into the status quo that I was talking about earlier. But with the PACES system in the Commonwealth through DHS, Department of Human Services, that needs an overhaul. That software was written ages ago. The calculations aren't correct. The domestic relations officers who work very, very hard. So I don't want to just throw them under the bus. It's a terrible job, and that's why you see such overturn and that people don't last in that job very long. The
Hmm.
caseworkers that are doing the math, they often don't even use the system. They do it manually, and they still have a right to up the number, to bring the number down, and they're influenced by outside parties on this. So sometimes that being the family law attorneys and those relationships.
Right. It's just very frustrating because if you do get your order back, um, and you have, even if you're disabled, the judge is still estimating you at that income you made when you were a nurse. I
Right.
don't know where they get this, where she thought that I could make 4,000 a month. I'm like, that's over now, lady.
Yeah,
You,
they also, again, since the rules and the math is decades old, there was an explosion 10 years ago in um, insurance, health insurance. So they can't base it on what was happening in 1972, that you should pay 90% and your spouse should pay the 10%. That 90% could be up to $20,000 a year that you're paying for health insurance for you and your children. It's absolutely outrageous. And the idea that when you get separated and you're in different homes, that the children have to maintain the same lifestyle, that's almost impossible. You're leaving one house and now you have to maintain two houses. It's impossible to be at the same income that the children in the so-called best interest. So the court might opt to say, well, geez, you just moved into an apartment that's two bedrooms. You have four children. They're better off in a house that they already were in, where they have four bedrooms. It's a hard pill to swallow.
it's, it's not fair to anyone. And I do encourage people to work it out together, which my ex and I had done 10 years prior until I remarried. And then something sparks, and then you get hauled into family court.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. How do you feel about judges getting psychological evaluations and lie detector tests to see? And oh, that goes for attorneys as well, because of who's contributing into whose judge campaign.
Yeah, well, let's cover two things. One, backing up just a little bit. I mean, a lot of counties thankfully have treatment court. We have treatment court in Lycoming County, which is fabulous, right? You got a substance abuse issue, you go through treatment court. I'm fortunate enough to get to attend some of these ceremonies when people graduate. So we have treatment court to help people get their life back. We have mental health court to help people navigate that system and get their life back. We have veterans court to help veterans that have issues work through those issues. But we don't have mommy and daddy court to say, let's say, Marianne, you get every other weekend and you say, geez, I want 50-50 custody. Why don't we have parent court that you come in and a judge goes, all right, Marianne, if you complete these tasks, then certainly you will get 50-50. There is no such thing because the counties and the courts would lose millions and millions of dollars. There, again, if we're doing it for drug addicts, we certainly should do it for fit, good parents. So that's something that I hope to be working with a group out of State College called Dad's Resource Center, that maybe each county can subcontract to them to say, yep, you're only getting this percentage. If you want 50-50, go take your classes. The other part my legislation is trying to do is if a judge doesn't give shared parenting, then they should have to put in writing why there's not shared parenting. Why are you not getting 50-50 custody? So those are just a couple things. To your second part about psychological and lie detector test, one of the issues, of course, is there's very, very little oversight of judges. Now, what every attorney will do, and of attorneys, they'll say, well, you can go to the disciplinary board, you can go to the judicial review board, and you can file your complaints. For the judges, I mean, they're being viewed by their colleagues, right? Less than 1% of the complaints that are made against judges are even acted on whatsoever. And I don't know the exact percent for attorneys, but pretty much the same thing. If you're not stealing money, um, or anything worse than that, then you're not getting in trouble. So
Hmm.
it needs to be a board made up of non-judges or a minimum of a few attorneys and former judges and then common people. You'd be better off if there was no family law and you didn't go to two attorneys, but you went to a mental health advocate, right? Or a child expert that would interview both parents and interview the children. So I'm all for turning the system upside down.
Hmm.
Because I go back to what everybody knows. The two attorneys are out for blood. They are literally out for blood. So we need to completely overhaul the system.
Here, let me help you.
Yeah.
It's, with this Title 4D, it just is. Then you've got Title 4B, which is your CPS. Over here in Pennsylvania, it's OCY caseworkers, and they're very corrupt, in my opinion. And then you've got this Title 4E, which is the foster care, which is raking in a lot of money. I think it rakes in more than Title 4D. That's just my assumption. But these are all playing in together, and they're just creating disasters for these kids growing up and creating more personality disorders within these children.
Yeah, I think a lot like politicians that caseworkers, whether it's through children and youth or through family court or whatever the case may be, they sort of get sucked into the system. Everybody else is doing it. But I do want to make a point, Marianne, I'm sure you'll agree. There are some good ones, right? They go in for the right reason and they want to help kids. And it is a tough job. The CYS gets beat up an awful lot. It is a tough job. But if you look at the history throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Lackawanna County, Luzerne County, all throughout, there's history there that is just a lot of corruption. And that corruption starts, right at the top. So,
Right. One of my fellow nurses told me that her sister went into work, for OCY, and what she was seeing was she couldn't tolerate it. So she lasted under a year and then found some other job.
yeah. Yeah, and then if you to sort of piggyback on that in the court system, I mean, you know the laws and professional conduct of attorneys and judges. You think about ex parte communication, and for the viewers and the listeners, that means that listen, if I'm going to talk to my judge, I have to make sure opposing counsel is involved in that conversation, and vice versa. If the judge wants to talk to one side, he or she has to talk to both sides. That just doesn't happen. There's so much ex parte
Mhm.
communication. I have witnessed when I was pro se, literally witnessed to watch opposing counsel walk right into a judge's chambers, spend 20 minutes there, and come out with me sitting there still waiting, which turned into quite a conversation between us and a little bit of a shouting match in the courthouse. So again, it goes back to those relationships of who's who and all of the nepotism.
What would have happened? Because I did that too. I would sit there and I'm going, why is he going back there? And then I'm thinking, hey, stupid, follow him. Or would a bailiff stop me and say, you go sit down? I wonder what would have
Well,
happened.
what's funny is the bailiffs and some of the officers that I have gotten to know, they know the system. And I hate to say they're the good guys, but as you get to know them and when they're in the courtroom, they're the witnesses, right? They've seen the corruption. They're not party to it usually. They're witnesses. Now they can't speak out or they're going to lose their job, so they are stuck. But if you get many of them, not all of them, one-on-one outside of the courthouse, and the things that they will tell you, and they have nothing to gain from this. So the things that these officers will tell you, or if nothing else, it gives you validation that you're not crazy. Because so many parents, when you're in it for so long, you start to doubt yourself. Like, am I the crazy one? Can this really be happening to me? Can they really legally kidnap my kids from me and keep them from me and only let me see them every other weekend while, uh, while another person fills your role, and suddenly you're knocking on the door of a house that you've owned 18 years to let your wife's boyfriend decide whether he's going to let you come in or not. Um, so that all comes into play. Um, Not an easy solution, but first thing we have to do is follow the money and get campaign finance reform. Certainly, members
Yes.
of the Law Association should never, ever be able to contribute a penny to somebody running for judge. So that's got to be changed. It sounds like it should be a simple change. It won't be. I can guarantee that. And then the flip side, judges also should not be able to give money out. There are some laws in effect for that, but there's ways around it. A judge's wife will give money to somebody running for district attorney and whatnot. So we definitely need a lot of oversight all the way around.
Most definitely. I love what you just said because I had come across this website, transparencyusa.org, and I've led it to other parents and I said, see if your state is on there and you can find out what attorneys are contributing to the judge campaign.
Exactly right. Yep. So I could sit here and give you 10 examples. Um, Absolutely. So, and to be fair, it's not just judges. We need campaign finance reform in the House of Representatives and in the Senate and all throughout Pennsylvania. We are one of the worst. You look at our history. I mean, we send attorney generals to prison, right? So there is so much corruption all around the country, but in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we're at the top or near the top of that chart. You can donate, Marianne, as much as you want to my campaign. You look at other states in the Northeast like Connecticut, New Hampshire, and there's a very, very small limit of what you can do. So it all starts with being able to follow the money and then being able to stop the flow of money. And that's what we need to work on.
Right. I know some parents that are pro se will point out that, this has happened. This attorney gave X amount of dollars to this judge, and they want the judge recused, and that doesn't happen. You know how this goes.
Yeah, I went through my case. I did manage to get 4 out of 5 judges recused, but it took most of it was after the fact, after the damage was done. So yeah, recusals, judges don't always follow. It's supposed to be just a common sense motion. I file a motion for recusal because there's an appearance. I'm actually trying to protect the judge because, well, there could be an appearance here because you used to be, an example, a law partner with opposing counsel. There would be an appearance that there could be bias. Not necessarily, Your Honor. You could be very, very upstanding, but there's an appearance. Some judges are very good at recusing themselves. Others couldn't be more opposite than that.
Mhm. Well, I tried to recuse my judge. It was Judge Robert Sambrook at the time, for the same, conflict of interest of working with the opposing counsel in the DA's department. And he was yelling that he was not going to let go of this case because, he knows it better than anyone else. I'm going, but the case just started. How
Yeah.
do you know it that well?
Well, again, Marianne, cameras in the courtroom would be helpful. So,
Yes. Oh, I completely agree. And uh, people have said, why doesn't the FBI get involved and go into these courtrooms and domestic relations units and start auditing?
yeah, great question. I mean, again, we go back to at the hearing officer level, there are no transcripts. So you're striking out there. At the court level, court of common pleas level, when you are before a judge, you can get copies of transcripts. And the court reporters work very hard, very talented core, but there's an expense to that. And if you're a pro se litigant, first of all, you probably can't afford an attorney. I don't want to be a pro se litigant, right? I want a good attorney that I'm paying a fair price. But if you can't afford an attorney, usually you can't even afford the transcripts. They're not cheap whatsoever. And when you do get a copy and you pay for those transcripts, where do you go from there? So it is a twisted, twisted system.
Oh, definitely, because I was racking up charge cards. So I was just like swiping away. And when I had to clear my name from the CPS, indicating me for, we'll say, emotional child abuse, which never happened.
Right.
But the one transcript was 600 and some dollars.
Yeah,
And it's like
absolutely.
swipe that American Express. And then I had a back-to-back indication because they were retaliating because I had informed the governor's office, who was the new governor at that time, Governor Wolf. So they came at me after I was cleared of that one with 4 days later, a secondary indication of emotional child abuse, which
Yeah.
was the one that cost me my job. But where was I going with this? It's the retaliation that is happening that, parents are scared to even open up their mouths.
The other thing to follow up on that is for pro se litigants, there's actually something called the American Rule, which in law means that hey, your ex-spouse pays for her attorney or his attorney, and you pay for your own attorney. But if you're a pro se litigant, you can't do what other attorneys can do. I could never say legally, Your Honor, you just proved that I was right, so I would like her attorney to pay the court fees. Nope, you can't do that as a pro se. And it happened to me many times. However, opposing counsels can say, I want Mr. Flick to pay my client's attorney fees. And that's upheld, even though there's this American rule that says, nope, you pay your fees, you pay your fees. Judges have so much power to not follow the law. And
Mhm.
that, again, I'm going way back to the top of the show, was critical for me to get my amendment in HB 378. That is now a law that judges, very simple, have to notify both parties, pro se or not, within 30 days to say, here are the 12 factors that I'm going to use to determine who gets how much custody. And I said it at the top, if I knew there were factors, you could keep your own score to say, okay, she does this more, I do this more, she does that. Hey, it's pretty even. Here you go. Let's resolve this quickly and painlessly, but
Mhm.
not the case. So what I'm learning is I can write the laws. I am a lawmaker. I just want to make sure that judges are not law breakers. There used to be a day when you'd walk into a courtroom, Marianne, and you'd see somebody sitting on a bench, maybe wearing handcuffs, and you'd say, "Oh, you know what? I think that's a criminal." Now you walk into that same courtroom, somebody's still sitting on a bench, but the bench is much higher, and instead of wearing handcuffs, they're wearing a robe, and now you're thinking, "Oh, you know what? That might be the criminal." So it's I hate to put it that way, but it's very, very true.
Mhm.
This level of corruption. Um, and there's again nobody willing to take this system on other than people like you. Like I said, there's tens of thousands of us out there that we are making a difference. In 4 states, the default is now 50-50 custody. People like Mark Ludwig out of
Mhm.
out of Missouri travels the country. My gosh, I hope he has a frequent flyer card because he racks up the miles, and he just does a tremendous job, not just from state to state to state, but also at the federal level. So thank God for folks like
Yeah,
you
he's
and like
awesome.
Mark and hundreds, if not thousands, of other quiet folks doing the same thing.
Definitely, because he wants to also do something with this Title 4D funding. So I think that's great. It just, there's so much corruption, and you've got personality disorders within the courts that zero in on the target parent. I don't know what to say.
Absolutely. I would say on that note, somewhat unrelated but somewhat related, there's also progress being made in the mental health field, and that is with diagnosis codes. And I don't want to get into too fuzzy of an area here, but my background in software development with mental health sort of pushes me down that path. So there's a relatively new diagnosis code called legal abuse syndrome. I think it's a Z63,
Mhm.
and that's new, and I don't even think there's case law on it. And that would give pro se litigants the ability then to sue opposing counsel if they went way out of a zealous defense of their client. If they caused you emotional harm or
Mhm.
they caused you physical disability, or in your case, a heart attack, or in my case, a stroke, they can now be sued for that legal abuse syndrome. They are using the court um, to do nothing but gain the almighty dollar sign and to hell with what your condition is. So we're making progress on the medical side of that also, especially on the mental health side. So things are happening. We just
Hmm.
have to make sure that our voice is loud and that it's heard in all 50 states.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I could talk to you all day. So
Likewise.
you're the only state rep that is not collecting a pension or 401k or meals or per diem. I think you should.
Well, listen, I ran for this one reason, right? I'm passionate that we need to get custody reform. So yeah, I think I'm the only state rep that takes no money. So I don't take money when I ran for office. No lobbyist, no PAC, no super PAC, and I get campaigns are very, very expensive. So I'm not slamming other state reps whatsoever. They need to get elected. They need to raise money for their campaigns. It has escalated. You look at a Senate seat, sometimes it's $1 million Senate seat to run for office. I'm fortunate enough when I ran that I just didn't take that money because it would influence me. There are state reps and senators that say, yeah, I get that money from the tobacco industry, but it doesn't influence me at all. I sort of just have to say things that make you say,
Hmm.
and follow money and look at the votes. So in my case, I decided I'm not taking any money, take no money at all. And at 102 to 101 in the House of Representatives, it couldn't be more purple. So sometimes I do vote with the other side, much to the chagrin at times of my own party. But I sleep really good at night, voting how I want to vote with zero influence from a lobbyist or a PAC or a super PAC or any other special interest groups at all. And as far as the pension, we get paid a lot of money. We get a six-figure salary. Pennsylvania is one of the top when it comes to funding their state legislators. So I don't think it's not meant to be a job that's a career job. You're supposed to serve a few terms and move on and hand it off to the next person. So I decided early on, no pension, no 401k, no per diem, no meal reimbursement. And it is. And again, I don't mean whatsoever um, to downplay or to degrade anybody that is working very, very hard. It's a challenging job. It is a 70-hour a week job. So it's like I say, it's challenging, but I'm enjoying and I'm up to the challenge.
And you're much appreciated by the parents that I've talked to in Pennsylvania. They're very excited about, what you've done in this House Bill 378. And, how can parents reach you if they have any questions?
I think it was funny since I started this. Um, boy, I am not exaggerating that we get 100 emails a day, easy 100 emails, each of them with the exact same story that you and I have, Marianne. Because you would think my story is the worst, but then you hear these other stories where people are committing suicide, and you
Hmm.
realize your story wasn't the worst. And each of them want me to call, and I have called everyone back. And I hate to say I can give you 15 minutes, but when you've got 100 phone calls, that's
Right.
1,500 minutes a day. So I spend weekends trying to call people back, and there's nothing worse. I mean, if you sit in these hearings in Pennsylvania, no matter what committee, it doesn't matter if it's a tourism committee, and you've got testifiers, and you say, okay, you get 5 minutes. Gosh, that's hard to swallow, right? You're there, you've studied this for years,
Mhm.
and you get 5 minutes to talk. Same in children and youth, same in judiciary. We're going to give you 5 minutes. You may have gone through a heart attack like you have, and you're going to get 5 minutes. That being said, there's only so many minutes, in a session or in a hearing. So I'd say go to my website. Hate to say that, but RepFlick, REPFLICK.com, and sign up to follow our email blast, our newsletter every single Friday. That email blast goes out and it updates all constituents on what I'm doing regarding custody, what I'm doing in the judiciary, in children and youth, and everything. So we've got, I don't know, probably upwards of 10,000 followers of that. So also just follow me at
Mhm.
repflick.com. So those are the things that you can really do. And feel free, you'll see the email address on there to email us and we will get back to you. Sometimes it takes a few days
Mhm.
given the volume. So
Definitely. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Marianne, we could talk for eight
I
hours.
know.
We really, really could. I would love to schedule a follow-up here as
Yeah.
we push legislation through, which is not an easy thing to do, as I said through that. Um, each time I get a piece of legislation, I'm happy, Marianne, to reach out to you. You have such a great audience, and people really, really excited by your podcast. So I will keep you informed as legislation works through.
Please do. That would
All
be
right.
great.
Thank
Okay.
you so much for having me.
Well, hey, don't jump off. Slam the
Okay.
Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you so much, Pennsylvania State Representative Jamie Flick. Thank you so
Bet.
very, very much for popping on.
You bet. All right. Have a good weekend.
You too.